Hey everyone, most of you people have been messaging me today that they're having problems with YouTube, and of course I am as well. YouTube for some reason is not working. I think it's not just a nationwide problem. I think it's a worldwide problem. I checked down, what is it, down.com or whatever to check to see if something's down, and it had like 30,000 reports of it being down, and a lot of other people can't stream as well. So I'm going to be doing this to Facebook, and then I'm going to upload it as a premiere to my channel after it renders. But I've got Christopher Hansen here, who is a fellow philosophical agnostic, and we're going to be doing Ask an Agnostic. So I don't know if people are going to actually be able to call in on Facebook as easy as it would be with YouTube. Clearly, I have a lot more subs on YouTube than I do on Facebook. But since there are a lot of people that have been joining my channel recently, maybe they might call. Maybe they're asked. If not, I got the live chat here, and I see a lot of familiar faces from YouTube. You know, got to see here Wayne Fillmore. I got Derek, and I got John and Max and Mo and Johnny and Cynthia. So hey, a few people. And in fact, I got Wayne Fillmore might want to call in. He's a theist. Maybe he's got some questions because I was talking to Chris before we went on air, which was the last an hour and a half, trying to figure out how to actually fix YouTube. Not that we do anything to bypass the problems they're having, but we managed almost once. I got on just for a second, at least enough to make an event, but it wouldn't let me do anything past that and save any changes. But I was asking him about agnostic atheism, and I've been writing a PowerPoint presentation, part 2 supplemental, to my PowerPoint presentation 1 that I did several weeks ago, or I guess it's been a week or two ago, that I uploaded to my channel, and also Atheist Edge had mirrored on their channel. Got rave reviews. I don't think it was my best PowerPoint that I've ever done, but it was decent, and it got a lot of the information out there. A lot of people had not been exposed to the things that we talked about before. A lot of them had not been even familiar with the logic, the reason, the positions that I hold and other people hold, and why they're moving away from the narratives that a lot of atheist groups are putting out there, because these groups cannot support their narrative externally to their own group. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a PowerPoint presentation part 2, and one of the things I will be covering is what I think absurdity of trying to juxtapose ontology and epistemology together in some bizarre narrative about calling yourself an agnostic atheist. People that can point me to Wikipedia and go, well, it's on Wikipedia, yes, but if you actually read the article on Wikipedia, it's very, very lame. Somebody needs to do a complete rewrite with that on Wikipedia. It has very low citations. As a matter of fact, it even says on there, needs verification, needs citations. But anyways, Chris, hey buddy, it's been a while. Welcome to Ask an Agnostic. Yeah, you've been doing schooling lately. You've been educating yourself.
Yeah, I'm finally done with school, so I'm getting back into the scene again.
Nice. Yeah, I heard you've had a few altercations with a few people that have disagreed with you on various Facebook platforms on mythicism versus historicist. What do they call what do you call it? Historicity? Historicity. Yeah, I guess historicity. So you'd be historicist.
Yes.
Yes. By the way, no, I have not regretted shaving off my beard. I am working on my tan. I'll be leaving out later on today, and I'll be going to the beach next weekend, and I want to get a full tan. So I had to shave in order to not get, weird looking white down here, and I feel younger, to be honest with you. If you guys want to check it out, look at I know I look a little younger, and then without my glasses. Ladies, I see Cheryl out there. Cheryl, you gotta have this, but no, you live too far away. So anyways, so let's dive into it real quick. I got Sadie out there. Sadie says, hey Steve, looking good, thank you, sweetie. So the problems with agnostic atheism, if people could call in or at least tell me in the live chat what they think when they hear agnostic atheist, that would really help me, because in writing my part 2 supplemental, I really don't understand what somebody means by it unless they tell me, right? And even then, there's like 12 different ways I've come up with of what it possibly could mean to have the term agnostic atheist make any kind of sense whatsoever, because it's confusing, because you're again trying to juxtapose epistemology and ontology together. So Chris, if you can talk a little louder, I guess people can't hear you very well. When you hear the term agnostic atheist, what's the first thing that you think that would imply? And again, not having to ask somebody something, right? I hate having to ask them, well, what do you mean by that? I like people to tell me their position, and I know what these words mean. And I think when they say agnostic atheist, it doesn't tell me anything. So when you have heard the term, what do you think that it means initially?
Initially, so what I would initially think now is different than how I used to. Now I think that it's initially just a contradiction in terms. That's my initial buzz. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, what do you think? But what? And I agree with you philosophically speaking. But let's go, assuming that we're going to be using their paradigm. Let's assume that, put aside in philosophical terminology, these weird ways of doing these things. This from the person that's telling you, "Hey, Chris, I'm an agnostic atheist." What do you think they mean by that?
Oh, so if they're saying that, then they're probably meaning, I don't believe that God exists, but I don't know. They're merging ontology and epistemology in some weird fashion.
Okay, so that's as one way of looking at it. So let's start with that, and then I'll kind of go into the second way of looking at it, which actually is more than that. But so the first way of looking at this, if we assume that atheism can be one of two things, just for arguendo, it's going to be either the case that a person believes that God does not exist, or if they want to be a lacktheist or they want to be an internet atheist, and I'm going to be using that term from now on, internet atheism. If you want to be an internet atheist and just think that atheism is somebody who doesn't believe in God, okay, so it's going to be one of those two things. Can we agree with that? They can't hear Chris? They still can't hear you. Why not? I hear Chris, and he's got desktop audio. Let me see if I can boost him up. Can you guys hear him at all?
Hello?
I mean, I could increase his dB if he's low.
Hello?
I hear you just fine. And you're coming over my OBS, so. Oh, he's very low. Oh, because I see. Yeah. This might be a problem here. Because now that I realize that I'm streaming not through my OBS because I was having a Facebook issue, I'm streaming directly to my Facebook, and it's picking up you as a secondary. So if you talk, I have to go like this. Talk.
Okay.
Now they can hear you better because they can hear you through the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
a problem here. So you guys can't hear me very well, but can you hear Chris better if I switch the mic?
Hello, check one. Do you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Let me know if you hear me in the chat below.
So now I bet they can hear you, but I'm going to be coming in kind of low, but we'll see here. So give me an audio level check here, guys. Brian, Max, Alan. Did you guys hear what he said? And how is because I can actually do it like this if it works. Okay, so it's better, I guess. So long as I can hear me, I don't want the mic to be too muted because I'm actually putting it in my headphones here. So, so you were saying that agnostic atheist would be, the first way of looking at it is somebody who claims not to know if God exists, but either believes God or doesn't, or does not believe, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's kind of go this first route. Let's assume that that is the case, that somebody who believes God does not exist. Okay. So if it is the case that they believe that God does not exist, and they're asserting it as a dosastic claim, but they're not asserting it as a knowledge claim, right? Then the term agnostic atheist in this case would be superfluous. It would be simply somebody who's just an atheist, right? I don't see any distinction in the first case of if you believe that God does not exist, you're not asserting it as knowledge, which would be atheist, and in the case of agnostic atheist, which would be somebody who believes God does not exist and is not asserting his knowledge. So in case one, and I'm going to be going through this video afterwards and writing these down. So in this particular case, this to me would be superfluous.
Yeah.
So why would somebody use that to mean that if that's what they mean by agnostic atheist? It would just be a superfluous term at this point.
You're roboting.
I'm roboting? No, I think everybody can hear me just fine. It might be on your end.
You're roboting on my end, so
this is a dead.
You'll have to repeat what you said. I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I said if in case one, where if it is the intention of the speaker as a illocutionary act to mean that they believe God does not exist, but is not asserting it as knowledge, right? They're not making that assertion, that assertive claim, then that is superfluous, because in that case, it is going to be the same as somebody who just says, I believe that God does not exist. They're not making a knowledge claim either way. So in this first case, I find it to be superfluous. Okay. Does the live chat agree with that? Do they see what I'm saying? In the first case, if we assume that the speaker means, I believe God does not exist, but I'm not asserting it as knowledge, that's both the same thing as saying either I'm agnostic, I'm an atheist, or I'm an agnostic atheist, in which case it's superfluous. It means it's no different than just saying I'm atheist. So in first case, I don't see a point of saying you're agnostic atheist. So I don't think that's maybe what they mean by that, although some people might. Does anybody in the live chat use agnostic atheism in the first case is what we're talking about, as in somebody who says, I believe that God does not exist, but I'm not asserting it as knowledge? Let me know if you do know anybody that has asserted it that way. So the second case would be atheism. Okay, somebody says they don't think that's right. Well, I've heard people use it that way, but again, there's 12 different ways I came up with off the top of my head the other day of what this phrase could mean. So in the second case, let's assume that they mean they lack a belief in God. Let's say they're internet atheists. They don't subscribe to philosophy very well. They don't really read about this stuff. And they go, oh, you know what? I'm an atheist because I don't have a belief in God. Okay, whatever. If that's the case, Chris, then saying then that they're not asserting it as a knowledge claim, to me, is nonsensical. Because you can't say, I don't believe in God, but I'm not asserting it as a knowledge claim. What does that even mean? How do you epistemically modify something if you don't even have a dostastic position to begin with to modify? Because since knowledge is a subset of belief, you have to believe something before you can even say you know it. So why would you bother even making it a claim like that? Because the way I look at it is if you know P, right? If you know there's no God, you also believe there's no God, which also entails you don't believe there's a God. So again, it's either nonsensical, or if I give principle of charity, superfluous. What is the point of saying agnostic atheist at that point then?
Yeah, there's no point at all.
So do you think it's more superfluous in the second case, or more nonsensical? I know Matt Delahanty finds it nonsensical, and I kind of do too. But what do you think?
I'd say nonsensical.
Okay. But in the best case, superfluous again.
Yeah,
because
best case superfluous, but I think is entirely nonsense.
Okay. So there's two cases there that just I don't understand why would somebody say agnostic atheist. Now, the other way of looking at it, and the way I'm trying to do my PowerPoint, is that let's suppose, Chris, that you're actually dealing with two different propositions. One of the propositions is ontology, God's existence. The other proposition is the knowability of God. You know, can you know if God's exist or not, right? That would be the epistemological proposition of agnosticism, saying that a hard agnostic would be somebody who says the knowledge of God is not knowable. That would be like a Huxleyan agnostic. A soft agnostic would say it's possible to know if God exists, maybe, at least in theory. So you'd have to differentiate between hard agnosticism and soft agnosticism, right?
Yep.
Okay. By the way, people can call in. The number to dial in is in the video description. I'm going to do this so your phone number will not show on the outside feed. Or you can use Zoom, and the meeting ID is on the screen, 824-866-714. You can use the web-based browser, or you can download Zoom to call in. So the third case, which would be mixing ontology and epistemology. So if somebody says that I'm an agnostic atheist, and what I mean by that is I believe God does not exist, and I also believe that the knowability of God's is what? I mean, here's where I get confused. When you say you're agnostic on the proposition of knowability, what are you telling somebody? Are you saying that you do not have a stance on that proposition? We'll call it Q, the knowability of God's. Or are you saying that you subscribe to soft agnosticism? Or are you subscribing to hard agnosticism? I can't tell. Because if you change that to Gnostic atheist, to me, a Gnostic atheist is sensical, if that's a word. But it's basically saying that somebody who believes that God does not exist, and they're affirming that they know God does not exist, right? Which is okay. A Gnostic atheist, I'm okay with, even though I don't like mixing ontology and epistemology. I can at least deal with that a little bit better than agnostic atheist. But at that point, you're no longer dealing with the nobility of gods. You're not dealing with two different propositions. You're still dealing with the single proposition of the ontology of God existing. So if that's the case for a Gnostic atheist, then how are you saying anything about the nobility of gods as a agnostic atheist? Again, it's very confusing. So what would you think that an agnostic atheist would be with the nobility of gods being the proposition for Q and the ontological existence of God being God exists as P? Does that make sense? This is really confusing even to me, but I know what I'm doing on it, but it's hard to actually relate it to somebody. So does that make sense to you, Chris?
Yeah.
So what would agnostic atheist be as far as the existence of God and the nobility of God? What is it saying?
Saying I believe there is no God, and yet I can't know if there is no God.
Okay, weird, right?
It's counterintuitive. If you believe there is no God, why would you believe that you can't know if there's a God?
Well, no, I'm okay. No, I think that's feasible. I think somebody could say, "Look, I believe there's no gods, but I believe that it's possible to know gods." For example, I think that it's possible to know one way or another. Let's just assume arguendo that it is. It's perfectly fine to say, "I believe there's God. I believe there's no gods, but I think we can know one way or another at some point in time." That's what I am, a temporal agnostic. So, but that would not be an agnostic atheist, in my opinion, because um, you're making an ontological claim that gods don't exist, and you're not agnostic to the proposition of the knowability of God. So let's say the Q is the knowability of God. Gods can be known. Okay, we'll call it that. I have three things that I can do with that proposition. I can affirm it, which means I can be a hard agnostic. I can be agnostic on that proposition, or I can be a soft agnostic and basically say that I believe that to be false, right? And because it's weird with the epistemology, if you say that proposition is false, that makes you a soft agnostic, which is different than what would work for a soft atheist. A soft atheist is somebody who says they do not believe, right? A hard atheist is somebody who says they do believe that gods don't exist.
Right.
So a soft agnostic is actually somebody who disbelieves the proposition that gods are knowable. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. This is why I'm having a hard time with the PowerPoint presentation. Is that it works completely different on an epistemological level than it does an ontological level. So if somebody says gods are knowable, right? How would you express that in that type of schema where you have Gnostic and I'll call it a multi-axial approach, right? Because that's what they use, a multi-axial approach. How would you address that as a multi-axial approach? In fact, let's walk it through this way, Chris. Might be easier. I will give you what it is, and you tell me what the phrasing would be, maybe. I believe God does not exist.
Atheist.
Okay. I do not believe God exists.
Non-theist.
Non-theist. Okay. And I agree with you. It also could be an atheist or a agnostic, right? You don't know.
Or it could be an atheist.
Or an atheist. You don't know what it could be, right? So, but you got that perfectly right. You can say logically that it is a non-theist, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe God does not exist, but I'm not asserting it as a knowledge claim.
Temporal atheist.
Okay, that is true. I believe that God does not exist, and I know that God does not exist.
Hard atheist.
No,
with a Gnostic claim.
So let's go with Gnostic atheist for that. Okay,
Sure.
Gnostic atheist, somebody who's claiming that they know that God does not exist.
Sure.
If that's the case, then what would be? I believe God does not exist, but I think they are knowable. Using that schema.
I think that'd have to be another brand of temporal atheist.
But that's not in the schema. That's not in the multi-axial approach. Because in the multi-axial approach, you have ontology on the X, you have epistemology on the Y. Right? You have four domains.
Yeah. Okay, so
this is where it can confusing for agnostic atheists because it means multiple different things.
Exactly, because
Exactly.
agnosticism, depending on how you take it, is in regard to either ontology or epistemology.
Right.
And so it becomes a category error to use it.
And that's the conclusion I was coming up with as well. But again, let's arguendo think that it isn't a category error. And I could say, if I say I believe God does not exist, but I think they are knowable, that falls under agnostic atheist in their schema, wouldn't it?
Yes.
How about if I believe God does not exist, and I believe that they're unknowable? That also falls under agnostic atheist.
Yeah.
Right? And the third one would be I believe God does not exist, and I'm agnostic on the proposition of the knowability of gods, which would also be agnostic atheist.
It's just the greatest example of really terrible equivocation going on.
It's horrible. So all three of those things could fall under agnostic atheist. So I want to let people know when somebody says they're agnostic atheist, find out what they mean by that, and then say, well, can it also mean this, this, and this? Because I think it's just one of the dumbest things internet atheists do is use terminologies like agnostic atheist. Now, there are some people out there in the philosophical sphere that use similar things. For example, Dr. Draper in Stanford Encyclopedia, he uses what's called atheistic Gnosticism. Or excuse me, he calls it theistic Gnosticism. And what he means by theistic Gnosticism is that somebody who claims that they know God exists, right? Somebody who believes God exists and also knows, right? So he puts theistic before the Gnosticism. He'll say somebody who believes God exists and also knows God knows God exists, which I'm okay with. It's not really that found that much in the literature. Go look up, try to go find anywhere where it uses theistic Gnosticism. You're only going to find it in a few places. But the term agnostic atheist, if you go to Google Scholar, good luck with it, man. You'll find very few places, if any. And it's usually in passing, and it's usually referring to something else. It doesn't really give you any prescriptive understanding of what that phrase means, because I have now found literally no place that uses it besides Wikipedia and Internet Atheist. Now, people can argue, well, you just have to ask people what they mean by it. That's sure, but it's so ambiguous to the point of why bother? And when we're talking about the existence of God, do we really give a shit if somebody says, well, the knowability of God, yeah, I weigh in on it as gods are knowable, or I weigh in as gods aren't knowable. Okay, that's fine, but that's not what we're really concerned about. We're talking about these great or big questions. We're talking about, does God exist? And so I think that people get really confused when they start mixing epistemology with ontology there. But if we got people in the live chat, what do you guys think are these things? What do you guys think people mean by agnostic atheist? And please call in. Number is in the video description. And of course, you can zoom in. You can just go to open a browser and go to Zoom and type that meeting ID number in. You can do it that way. Or I can actually be nice to you all, and I'm going to put the link in the video in the live chat. So I'm going to try that real quick. Like I said, we're going to do this on YouTube, but unfortunately, YouTube's down. So, all right, so that's the link to join. If somebody wants to click it, I will try to do my best to make sure that your number is not shown. I figured it out where I can actually hide the inside and just talk to you as somebody who's in the Zoom hangout. So what else do you want to go on with that? What's some other things that people can mean by that? I was thinking, like, if somebody says agnostic atheist, they if you read it literally, well, I hate the word literally, but if you read it that straight through, to me it implies that you're agnostic about you being atheist. I don't know if I'm atheist, but I don't know if I am or not. I'm agnostic on whether I'm atheist or not. I think that's kind of a dumb way to look at it, but it can be inferred that way.
That is like the most weird Pyrrhonian bullshit.
Do you, by the way, do you know any Pyrrhonian skeptics? I gotta find one.
To be honest, I'm actually starting to borderline go that route.
Are you an academic because the two main schools of skepticism are Pyrrhonian and academic skepticism. You know, have you heard of the academic skeptics?
No.
They're the ones that say they're like Pyrrhonian, but they're not as extreme. The Pyrrhonian skeptic says, hey, you know what? Knowledge, we don't even know if knowledge is even possible. But the academic skeptic says knowledge isn't possible. They make a claim on that. But the Peronian world goes, they're so much of a skeptic that they say, we have no idea where we can get knowledge or not. Although I don't subscribe to either. I think we can have knowledge, but it is very difficult to really justify it. I got to be honest with you. Justifying knowledge is not that easy.
Yeah, I'm starting to actually go borderline Pyrrhonian skeptic, honestly.
So you don't think knowledge is obtainable?
I'm not quite there yet. Basically, the concept that I most agree with Pyrrhonians is basically stop worrying about knowledge of the world and just deal with things the way they look and appear.
Yeah, no, I agree with that if I was going to go the skeptic route. But I think the argument would be more along the lines of,
the idea that there is no knowledge, or that knowledge we don't know, we don't know if we can attain knowledge.
Exactly. That's the hard part.
I have been toying with for like the past 2 months.
Well, first you need to determine, in order to be a Pyrrhonian skeptic, first you got to determine if you're uncertain about knowledge at all, right? I mean, if you say knowledge is possible, then you're not a skeptic. If you say knowledge is not possible, you're a skeptic, a hard skeptic, if you're an academic skeptic. Or you can say that I don't even know if knowledge is possible, in which case you're a Pyrrhonian skeptic.
Right.
Where do you follow?
Which is that's starting to go where I am almost.
Is that because of the issues with justified true belief? Like the Getty Air problems? Because the problem I have with justified true belief is that Dr. Linda Zabowski, she wrote a paper on this, and I forget the title, and I wish I could remember it, but she wrote a paper on belief first theories of knowledge. All of them suffer from possible Getty Air problems due to what's called epistemic luck issues. And I think she makes a very good case for that. And so anytime you have a theory of knowledge that starts with belief first, as in one of the tripartite conditions, which would be the proposition has to be true, subject has to believe the proposition, and the subject has to be justified to believe the proposition is true. It's hard to meet those three criteria, because now when you're dealing with if P is true, now you're getting into theories of truth. What makes something true? What makes something justified to be true? So 2 out of those 3 conditions are very difficult to really justify sometimes. I can justify the second one, right? I can say, look, I believe that it's true. And I can probably justify why I believe it. That at least I can conceive. But justifying why it's true, it seems to be very, very difficult, because you have to have certain truth makers, and you have to have a theory of knowledge, or a theory of truth, which allows you, whether you do a correspondence theory of truth or a deflation theory of truth or whatever you subscribe to, that makes it very more difficult. So I understand that the appeal of skepticism, I really do, but I don't think I'd go down that path. I think it's not epistemological nihilism is really difficult, man. To try to justify.
Like when it's going to come down to it, even if I do take up the position that of Pyrrhonian skepticism, it's not really actually going to affect any, like, how I live my life any.
No,
it's just
no.
It's just purely academic at that point.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, this is all epistemic stuff. This has nothing to do with how you live your life.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just ultimately the difficulty in it is mostly just going to be, wrapping your head around it for however long that takes. But for me, I'm already skeptical enough that it doesn't it's not a particularly difficult thing for me. Like, if knowledge is not possible, it doesn't actually particularly affect me.
Yeah, no, I don't see why it would change your daily routine or daily life. I mean, look at these are epistemic questions, whether knowledge is something that actually can be attained or not. It doesn't really change the fact that we have to assume that we know things or act like we know things. Whether we do in a philosophical sense or not, that's a philosophical question. And if we don't, we don't, right? If there is something like epistemological nihilism, so what? It's just that I don't think it's a path I can walk, because then you have to get rid of all the theories of knowledge, right? If you can't have knowledge, what good is a theory of knowledge? What good is even a semantic theory of knowledge, like Tarski's semantic theories of knowledge? What's the point of even trying to determine what is knowledge at that point? You're like, knowledge is impossible, whatever. But
No, yeah, I'm not. I don't think I could ever get to a place where I'd say knowledge is impossible, but a Pyrrhonian position of being a knowledge agnostic.
Well, the Peronian is not agnostic on the questionability of if knowledge is possible. They actually, well, no, they are. You're right. Actually, now that I think about it, they are literally
Yeah,
agnostic on that proposition.
Pyrrhonian.
Right? Good call. You're right. Wow.
Yeah,
Because they're the ones saying that we don't know if it's possible or not. That's agnostic. If the proposition is knowledge is obtainable, they're agnostic on that proposition. Where's Ozzy when you need him? But yeah,
Ozzy,
right.
get in here.
Ozzy. No, I think you're actually right on that one because it makes sense because if they're saying that knowledge, they don't even know if knowledge is possible or not. They literally would be agnostic on that particular proposition.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
I'm willing to. I'm not willing to say that knowledge is impossible. I'm not sure that any such claim can be justified.
What would that be more of an epistemological nihilist?
Yeah.
That's like
I'm not sure epistemological
skeptic.
nihilism can be justified, but I think that epistemological agnosticism is more than valid.
Yeah. So what would be the difference between epistemological nihilism and academic skepticism then? Because the academics would say that knowledge is unobtainable as well.
Well, I'd say that they're the same thing.
It seems so, but I think I'm missing something there. Because they can't be the exact same position, can they?
Well, they can. I mean, it's going to be like the same people. So it's going to be the same people that take up moral nihilism, but then say that their technical position is moral error theory. They're still a moral nihilist.
Yeah, error theory falls under ethical nihilism.
Yeah, they're still an ethical nihilist, despite the fact that their technical position is moral error theory.
Yeah, but you know what? I have an issue with that, and hear me out, because you just did a debate on moral theory, right?
Yeah.
So error theory. So I like error theory. Don't get me wrong. I like the way McRae argues it. But if you accept that there is an instantiation issue with the proposition, such that you cannot have a cognitively I guess it would be cognitively meaningful, but it would never be true, right? It would always be untrue, and I'm using untrue instead of false for a reason here. But if you say stealing is wrong, and there's no property of wrongness which you can instantiate into that proposition to make that proposition ever be true, then that proposition has an error to it. Okay, it's not necessarily false in my opinion, but it has an error to it. We're going to call that untrue, even though untrue means false, but this is semantics here. In which case, I can see it fall under ethical nihilism, but to me, an ethical nihilist, the way they look at morals is saying morals don't exist at all, right? But the error theorist is not saying morals don't exist. They're just saying that moral propositions don't express true statements. They're always going to be not true, or I should say untrue.
So, no, Mackey's position was that they were actively false.
Yeah, untrue. Okay. Well, did he say that they're false or untrue? Because
he said he described them as false.
Okay. Which still seems kind of odd to me, because you're making a propositional value to it, saying that it's truth apt, but you're saying that it's false. You're saying that stealing is wrong. It's false. To me, would say that stealing isn't wrong, right? Because I say stealing is wrong. If I assume that would mean if it's true, I'm affirming the case that stealing is wrong, right? And if I say it's false, it would mean that I disbelieve that proposition, and I'm saying stealing is not wrong. But that's not what Mackey's saying, I thought. That's not.
No, yeah, because Mackey's saying that the proposition is something. It is. He's saying that basically the question is stealing wrong is nonsensical because it comes from something that's false.
But see, this is where I hate error theory. If the proposition's false, you're saying that stealing is not wrong, okay? But in error theory, that's not his argument. What his argument is saying is that there's an instantiation issue, which makes that statement untrue. It makes it an error. That's why it's called error theory. There's an error in
Right.
promoting
No,
that
yeah,
proposition.
it. So he's not right. So the thing is that by saying false, you're not actually saying that stealing is not stealing is not wrong. You're saying that it is neither wrong or right because the instantiation it doesn't make sense. The whole question just is it wrong doesn't make sense
It's
because
not
it
even
has
wrong.
an instantiation error from the start.
Yeah, and that's the way I looked at it as well. That's why,
Right.
but that's why I don't like
But
saying that it's false.
continuing
I like
on
saying
from
untrue.
that, because the instantiations are false, therefore the concept of objective morality must be false because it is an error.
Well, yeah, the error theorists would say there is no objective morality, and also say there's no subjective morality either.
Right. So it is a form of ethical nihilism. It is just a very particular and refined form of it.
Yeah, I guess it would have. I mean, where else would you put it? It would have to fall under ethical nihilism.
Yeah, I'd categorize it as a form of ethical nihilism, and then I would also render it under I'd put it as a subcategory of instantiation ethical nihilism because it goes after from the instantiation point.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do as well. By the way, one of these days we should actually come up with an eliminist type approach, a reductionist type approach to everything that we can find where you could actually justify being nihilistic in everything, right? I mean, it's weird, but think about it. Error theory, which would be moral nihilism, does make sense, right? So you have moral nihilism. You have epistemological nihilism, which actually makes sense if you don't think knowledge is possible, which I can get behind, even though I disagree with it, but I see the appeal. You can have neurological nihilism, where you say objects don't even exist because they're just rearrangements of atoms, right? So like this cup, which by the way is green screen, which is cool. So watch this. Neurological nihilism would be something like this. I have an object here. You see an object, even though if you're watching the outside chat, Chris, you can see it, and you can't see it internal.
Yeah.
But if I say, look, all this is a rearrangement of atoms to make this what we perceive to be an object, then it goes away. It actually disappears. It's no longer an object anymore. Because it's just a rearrangement of something that just by moving those molecules and atoms in a certain alignment, does that really create something? Because if you look at a picture, all picture is points of dot of colors, right? You can look at any photograph and you can zoom in on it and all you see are points, right? Mm-hmm. Those arrangements make that photograph, but does that photograph actually have ontology? Think about that. Does that photograph actually exist? To neurological nihilists, it wouldn't. Because it's just a rearrangement of atoms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm getting the zoom in. So
yeah, actually, I'm not opposed to that, really.
All right. So, and I'm not either. By the way,
I think the only way around that would be to try and argue some weird form of Neoplatonism.
Yeah, and I'm not a big Neoplatonist fan. I think those guys are nuts, man. They're all Thomists too, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I do actually have I get the appeal of Platonism. I think it's kind of cool, but I don't buy it. The whole idea of these perfect forms and everything is trying to attain its perfect form.
Yeah, they're archetypes. Well, okay, we'll get into that in a second, but we have 3 types of nihilism that we're already at right now. We might have to sit down one day and just come up with more types of nihilism. So what is reality at this point, right? Reality doesn't even exist if you really go down that deeper rabbit hole, because there's just nothing. There's no knowledge. There's no objects. There's no morality. What exists? What actually is tangible? But when you're just talking about refresh my memory. We just said, because I put it on the back burner for a second.
Platonism.
So I can get behind mathematical Platonism, and most mathematicians that I talk to, a lot of them do tend to mathematical Platonism. I tend to reductionism myself, but it doesn't really matter because it's just 2 ways of looking at something. But they make a good argument. I don't know if you ever read Quine's thesis. But
I haven't, no.
Quine's thesis argues that we should accept mathematical Platonism because it has utility. And unless we accept that these mathematical strong constructs have some kind of ontology to them or usefulness, that it makes no sense to try to justify using them then. So he argues in Quine's thesis that because they have utility, because they have usefulness, that we probably should go to mathematical Platonism. That's the way I'm reading Quine. But Quine's a very difficult read, and I probably butchered what he says because he's probably one of the most difficult persons to get into. But I can maybe ask Ozzy to join us one day about that if you can kind of paraphrase Quine for us.
I'm gonna lose sound here for just a sec.
Okay. Now, while he's doing his mic thing, if you want to join us, you're more than welcome to. The meeting ID number is 824-866-714. You can join via Zoom, or you can call them through your cell phone. The cell phone number will be 1408-638-0968. Or if you live in the East Coast, you can use 1-646-876-9923. And go ahead, come on and ask us some questions. Ask an agnostic. You got two of them in here. Although, you know what? Do you even ascribe to taking the atheist position any longer, or are you just strictly call yourself agnostic now?
Strictly agnostic.
Is that, I'm not trying to take credit for this, but is that anything to do with my argumentation, or is that just something you came?
Yes, actually, because previously I was identifying as an agnostic atheist before I met you.
Nice. And I'm thrilled when people actually take on board what I say, and I have a lot of people that have changed their ideological positions. And it's not so much that they took the time to believe me. It's just that, to me, I think that's an intellectual, honest approach, right? They hear something and they go, you know what, maybe I should check into this. And a lot of them have. And they go, well, crap, Steve makes very valid arguments. He's actually citations very well. He backs up his information, and it makes more sense. And I want people to be critical thinkers. I want people to think rationally. And when I hear people just by fiat push me to the side, like a lot of the big name atheists do, I really have to question how much they are advocating critical thinking. They can disagree with me. I'm fine with that. But to blow me off as not even to evaluate my arguments, I find to be disingenuous, because I hate to say it, but I have found nobody that is a PhD in any of these topics that really gives me any flack on it. And that's not, I'm not trying to say I'm right because, experts agree with me. That would be an argument from authority, right? There'd be a fallacious use of appeal to authority. What I will say that it is a legitimate appeal to authority to say I have actual, educated people that write these materials. I mean, Dr. Oppie writes these things. I mean, he's literally at the level where he writes the prescriptive forms of philosophy for people. And when he came on, he didn't seem to have a problem with any of this, what I said. So the only thing that he said is that usage does the usage does kind of tell us how these words are used in society, but he never seemed to argue that what I said is how it is in philosophy isn't how it is. So give me 1 second. I got somebody calling in. All right, who do we got here? Hello.
I can't hear him.
I can't hear him either. Mav. I think we got Mav here. Hello. Nope. I hear something.
Hey there.
Hey.
There we go.
There we go.
This is my first time using this on my phone.
Okay, so what do you got for us? What's your question?
Oh man.
Put you on the spot here.
I've been meaning to ask about basic formal ontology. I've mentioned it to you a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to encourage you to look into it, but I guess the best sales pitch that I can give for it refers to what I've previously said, is that basic formal ontology has the ability to unite the sciences. I didn't quite get a chance to explain what I meant by that.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you mean by formal ontology?
Right. So like an ontology is kind of a set of terminology that is mapped together to make a model of reality, right? Or some domain of reality.
Yeah, I would say ontology is your view of what exists, what actually has some kind of reality to it.
Yeah, it's how you categorize being, right?
Yeah, that's
So-
what it is, being, right, ontology.
Yeah. So the formal ontology is meant to be an ontology that is domain neutral. It's not specific to any particular domain. And the idea behind basic formal ontology is to serve as a foundation for all other ontologies in the sciences. And what that means is that the ontologies within the other sciences have to be restructured and standardized under BFO.
Okay.
And if they do, then what that becomes is a series of ontologies that are interoperable with each other.
It's just,
Does that make sense so far?
yeah, but it's kind of reminiscent. Do you remember something called model-dependent realism by Stephen Hawking?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that.
Okay, so you know there's scientific realism, scientific instrumentalism, scientific anti-realism, right? Model-dependent realism was the view that when you have a scientific model, that model is basically the model dictates what reality is. Okay, so when you're trying to figure out what we mean by what is reality, we call it true reality. You can never actually know what base reality is, right? You can never know the terrain. So let's look at it this way.
Sure.
And you get back to your ontology, but when you look at reality, right, we have a perception filter. So we have a map in front of us always. We can never get rid of that map. And what that map is our theory of the world of what the terrain actually is, right? We never directly ever see the terrain because we have obviously filters that we go through, and whatever base realism is, who the hell knows? Ooh, yeah. So we can never actually be, in this regard, certain of anything. So what a model-dependent realism is basically is saying that we use a model. That model is a scientific realist position such that the reality is what the model dictates it to be. Like general relativity would be the spending of space-time. That is what actually happens. Space-time exists. It actually has ontology to it and actually bends. While this, like, scientific instrumentalist goes, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And the scientific anti-realist says, no, that's not really what reality is, but the models work and we're going to use them. But what actually reality is probably nothing like what the model is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So go back to your ontologies, because you're talking about some kind of base ontology there.
Yeah. So I guess I don't want to get too specific about what BFO actually consists of, but I do want to say that if you watch the instructional videos on it, you'll see that there is some philosophical background put into it, and it has a specific set of rules for guiding how to make ontologies under it. And
So what's the benefit of that?
say again?
What's the benefit of having your base ontology like that?
Like I mentioned earlier, it's about serving as a foundation for all of the other ontologies and making them interoperable and making it so that they can be compatible in terms of like computer reasoning, for example.
Mm-hmm. So would this be applicable to more like an artificial intelligence?
It would eventually, I think, have usefulness for that, sure.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm not familiar with it at all. I mean, I've never even read anything on it, so this is all brand new stuff to me.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm a foundationalist, so I take a lot of stuff foundationally.
I can give you a little bit of a history on it.
Sure.
It was born out of the Human Genome Project, actually, because within the Human Genome Project, they were dealing with so much data and so many categories of things that they had to find a way to organize it, and they tried to generate an ontology or series of ontologies to help manage that, and use computers to manage the data and reason with it. And so the ontologies that they built for the Human Genome Project happened to be Aristotelian, and you'll find out more about that if you watch the videos, but like it's rather Aristotelian, and Barry Smith, the guy behind BFO, thinks that Aristotle had the right idea for how to categorize things.
Okay.
And what it allowed for was for reasoning with regard to biological components and biological processes and how they relate to each other. And so you can reason about the relationship between genotypes and phenotypes and how they manifest in protein generation and ultimately in the traits that arise at the organic level.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm a little confused here because I'm not quite sure how this deals with ontology. I mean, we understand how phenotypes relate to a genotype, clearly. I mean, obviously, years of study of DNA, we know that the phenotypical expression comes from the fact that you have a gene that's producing some kind of protein that's causing some kind of structural change or morphological change or enzymatic function, whatever it's doing. It's producing something that's going to create a phenotype difference, right? If it's not let's say it's not a neutral mutation or something that's causing something that's not even noticeable, right? Something that evolution can affect, right? So let's say you have a non-neutral mutation that has a positive effect, such that is beneficial to the creature in a particular environment. Is that the ontology you're talking about? Because I'm kind of confused where ontology comes into play here.
Yeah, so like the ontology would be dealing with the interactions between each of the entities involved, right? The DNA sequences, the proteins, the codons, all of the physical entities you're dealing with, and it ties those in with how each of those behave, and it forms. You can use that to form models.
Okay, but we already have a model of we know how translation goes to mRNA goes to translation. We understand how codons are read. We understand how proteins are produced in the ribosomes. So what model are you using?
We do.
Yeah. So what is this?
Yeah.
So what model are you using that adds anything to that?
Well, what BFO is about taking those models and standardizing the ontological structure, and that allows it to be integrated with the other sciences.
Chris, do you want to chime in on that? Because I'm not getting the full picture of what benefit this actually has. And I know Mav knows the stuff, so it's not like it's not like it's word salad, but I know where I'm at a wall. I know where it's not clicking with me what this BFO advantage is as far as having an ontological system where you're combining other ontologies. So Chris, maybe you might want to add into this because I don't even know where to go with it, to be honest with you.
This is beyond me as well. Like,
well, Mav, I think that you probably hit our limit because you know me, right? I will not pontificate on stuff that I have absolutely no idea what the hell is going on.
Right. Yeah. And I think what I just want to say is that Barry Smith, who gives the presentations on it, I think he could probably do a good job of explaining what the practicality of BFO is.
Well, I will check that out. Send me the video. Email it to me. You got my email, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So send me, and I'll check it out when I get a chance, right? Hey, we got Walker in the live chat. I haven't seen him around for a while. We need to get. You know what, Graham, call in. I want to, let me give you he's supposed to join us on Sequitur one of these days. So if he's got some time, he's a professor of English. So he makes me nervous whenever he watches. Yeah, because I don't speak English well, even after all my years of being on YouTube. So, but anyways, man, we appreciate it, man. I appreciate the call in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, thanks, buddy.
Professor of English, you say?
Yeah, my sister has an English major. She likes all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that is my major currently.
That is true. You are actually you did change your major to actually English, didn't you?
Yeah, early on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the link to join is in the video description again. Link is actually in the comment section as well. We're going to be going for another about 6 minutes, unless we get somebody to call in. I like to keep these things down to an hour or so. But if you want to call in and ask an agnostic a question, by all means. It's kind of weird, though. We went from agnostic atheist to skepticism to ontologies to biology. So I guess the way it works around here. Let's see here. Some questions in the live chat. Clyde, I don't know if Steve McRae is aware, but intuition pumps can elaborate on them. I'm confused about them. What the hell is an intuition pump? No, I don't know what that is, Clyde. I know about certain other kinds, like I know about centrifugal pumps. I was in the Navy. I know about ion motive driven pumps, like ATP synthase is kind of a pump in a way. It's actually more of a motor, I guess. There's electromotive force, but it's actually due to a differential in ion gradient of the hydrogen on one side of the membrane to the other. But there are types of people that call those things pumps. I don't know. To me, a pump is a mechanical thing in some way. Now, does that necessarily mean it has to be mechanical? Probably not. But I'm used to dealing with mechanical pumps. Like a heart is a mechanical pump. So they devise a pressure difference because of mechanical force behind it. We have a net positive suction head, and then you have a differential of pressure from one side to the other because you're putting energy into that system. So, sorry, bro. Sadie Murray, you want to call in? Let me give you the link one more time. There we go. So anyways, though, so the people in the live chat, do you think that they agree that at this point, agnostic atheism is basically atheists wanting to sound cool? Like, oh, look, I'm not just an atheist. I'm an agnostic atheist. Because one thing I think it does is it really changes the way the word agnostic is understood in philosophy. I'm going to leave people with this, and then you can chime in, Chris, and let me know what you think.
But Steve, philosophy's useless.
Yeah, except that philosophy deals with logic, reason, knowledge, truth. Philosophy of science deals with methodological naturalism, which is by which science would be useless without it. So yeah, it deals with ethical theories, bioethics. But so agnostics, when people
Steve, it doesn't tell us about reality. That's what science does.
actually, philosophy is about reality. Reality is a philosophical construct.
I know. I'm just
It's not
being
existence, right? What exists? Well, existential. That's philosophy. But when I hear people say agnosticism deals with knowledge, the first thing I think in my head is this person's never read a book on the topic. This person has never read a paper on the topic. I have never heard anybody say that just like that without adding certain caveats to it. Because if I know what they're talking about, if I know they are well read, then I understand they're talking about epistemological propositions. But if the average schmuckatelli who's just coming to me and saying, well, Steve, agnostic has nothing to do with atheism as far as the existence of God, well, they're confusing the epistemological proposition with the psychological state. So let me leave people with this. Agnosticism is the psychological state of being agnostic on the proposition of theism. It is somebody who says, I do not believe theism is true, and I do not believe theism is false. I have suspended judgment on it. It is not a knowledge claim. It has nothing to do with knowledge. The position is a belief position, a second order belief position, which I'm going to be doing a presentation on, that you are unjustified to hold a belief either way. So if you want to call that atheism, you're more than welcome to, but I'm explaining to people what it is in philosophy and how it is in textbook and how it is if you want to go read a paper and how it is in college if you want to go take these courses. Internet atheism is not college level. Internet atheism is not philosophical level. It's not peer review level. It is just a group of people that have gotten together and say, hey, look, we're going to call ourselves atheists by this definition. Fine. I'm not a member of that group. I'm not a member of the ACA, the Atheist Community of Austin. I'm not a member of American Atheist. I think they're one of the worst political groups out there. And I'm not a member of Atheist Republic. In fact, I'm banned from them. So I do not affiliate with these atheist groups. And so if you want to be affiliated with those groups, you want to use their terminology, by all means. But don't come after me if you're using terminology, which is how it's used in actual philosophy. So, but anyways, Chris, what do you got for us before we kind of leave?
I don't have much more to add to the discussion itself, but I got shameless plugs.
Well, we like shameless plugs. Go for it, man.
Well, good. Okay. So I have a debate with RCA coming up on polytheism in the Bible. And that's going to be this Thursday, to my knowledge, and it's supposed to be on non-sec.
Yeah.
And I've got a stream tonight on my channel, Biblical History Skeptics. We're reading through Exodus right now. And other than that, I think that's it. Recently I was also in a stream on the Myth Vision podcast with Dr. Robert Price.
Oh, you're on stream with Price. Nice.
Yep. So you guys can check that out as well on Misvision.
Awesome. Well, the upcoming events for me on June 4th, 2 days from now, I have Dr. Jeff, I think his name's Ziowski. I cannot pronounce his last name. I've actually asked somebody, help me pronounce his last name. I'm going to have to get his name down. But he's actually with Reasons to Believe. He's a PhD in astrophysics. And he's going to be coming on my channel, not non-sequitur, but on my channel first, live through the RTP studios. And he's going to be coming on to discuss if cosmology and Christianity are compatible. So that'd be very interesting. That's going to be a call-in as well. People can actually call in and ask them questions. We've got them for a full hour. And then on Sunday, I'm going to be doing another debate. Yeah, this will be my, fifth debate, I think. And now I'm not making this up, but Chris, have I ever lost a debate in your opinion?
No, you're the Joshua Brister.
Except that I can actually count how many I've actually done and name them and actually show why I won. I'm pretty sure a win is, well, the first debate I ever did, my opponent conceded that I won and actually changed his position, actually left Young Earth Creationism. I don't know what a bigger win would be. So that was Wayne Fillmore. My second one was Ronnie, and he left in the middle because he was getting his ass handed to him. And he actually said word for word, I don't want to continue. So I would call that a win, right?
If you can make your opponent rage quit, that's for correct reasons.
Yeah, it wasn't a rage. I don't know what it was a rage quit. He was lost. He didn't know what was going on. Oh, I got a caller. One quick. And
hey, James. We can't hear you, James. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, hang on. Let me see if I
Yeah,
can put
I'm
James
just
on
now
here.
getting on. I may have a bad signal, but I had a question for you guys.
Go. Okay, give me 1 second here. I'm promoting my stuff real quick, and then we'll get you on, James.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. And let me hang on 1 sec. So I'm going to be doing a debate on Modern Day Debates channel with somebody. I don't even know his name. Sorry. And that's going to be on. He wants to grill me on atheism and agnosticism with the use of my terminology, and I'm going in blind. He kind of told me a little bit about his argument. It didn't make any sense to me, but hey, look, I will take on anybody on this particular topic. I may not be an expert. I don't have the credentials, but I guarantee I think I'm more well-read on agnosticism and atheism than pretty much 90% of the community out there, maybe even more. And if somebody doesn't agree with that, that's fine. But I think I'm pretty well-read, and I'm the kind of person to say, look, if I don't know something, I don't know something. But I think I know a little bit about this particular topic. So that's going to be at 4 o'clock Eastern, and I'm looking forward to that. So anyways, James, the tired atheist, what you got for us?
So I was in a discussion with a Muslim, and his big argument against atheism was, he said all atheists are absolutely nihilists.
Yeah, I don't
Wrong.
get that. Yeah, I don't get that. Look, we were just talking about nihilism before you showed up, believe it or not.
Sam Harris can prove that is a wrong statement.
Yeah, atheism does not lead to nihilism. As a matter of fact, somebody who says that leads to nihilism, I don't think they're using nihilism in any cogent way that I would use it. I agree that there are reasons why people subscribe to different types of nihilism. They have a lot of appeal to them, especially when dealing with ethical nihilism or epistemological nihilism, neurological nihilism. They have appealed to them. But I think he's more talking about what's called annihilationism, right? He says that's what the religious genre would call something where you just don't exist, right? Lack of existence. We'll call that annihilationism. Sure, if you're an atheist and you don't, but that doesn't entail that either, because you can be an atheist and still believe in an afterlife, right? So what do they mean by nihilist then?
That was his biggest thing, and his hinging point was not believing in an afterlife.
But an atheist can believe in an atheist can believe in an afterlife. They're two different propositions. One's a proposition of the ontology of the existence of God, and the other one is a question of existing after we die. That's a completely different proposition.
Yeah, I thought for sure I knew your thoughts on this. His biggest site was that he knows Steve McRae, and he's on his friends list. And he said Steve McRae asks my friend for philosophy information.
You know what's funny? It's weird. I get cited, and I'm like trying to explain to people. I don't mind people citing me. I don't, and people do bring up my name a lot. You see how many times I'm tagged on Twitter. and how many people use my name for, hey, I don't think Steve McRae would agree with this, or Steve McRae would be the person to talk to on this. But I have to still remind people that look at just because I have an opinion on this doesn't mean that you should take me as authority or an expert. I'm not, but go research it yourself. But take it under evaluation, right? Same thing I do with anybody I talk to. You're not an expert on certain things. Chris is not an expert on certain things. But when they give me a good argument, I take it under advisement, right? Just like anybody should.
I'm an expert on everything.
Yeah, Josh. Okay. We're going to call you Josh Brister. So, yeah, James, I don't know what they're talking about when they say that atheism leads to nihilism. I think that's complete crap.
The other thing was he asked me 2 questions. He said, now we're going to use strict terms of philosophy. And he goes, and I want you to also tell me your worldview. And I explained to him, I said, if we're going to use strict definitions, I'm an agnostic. I don't really have a position on the prime mover because I don't believe that I can never really know that. And I said, but as far as my worldview, I said, it's a Western culture worldview. I'm sure that my Judeo-Christian upbringing has affected my worldview. But this Muslim wanted to completely dismiss that as not being a worldview.
It's a worldview. No, look I don't like label. Again, this is just me. This is not from any philosophical source you're going to find. Well, there's one person that does argue this, but he's a biologist. But I don't believe worldviews are really a thing for the most part, at least label-wise. To me, what a worldview is your overall theory of the world. I don't know how you would actually put a label on that, right? It's just how I view my overreaching meta and normative ways of looking at the universe. Now, if people wanted to make little labels for that, I have an atheist worldview, I have a Christian worldview, I'm okay with that. It just doesn't work for me. But if you say, look, I have a Western central, centered Christian type approach to things, I don't no issue with that. But you really said something that really kind of intrigued me though. You're saying when you're more agnostic now, you don't have to even know whether God exists or not to be agnostic, right? I mean, clearly, if you know God exists, you're a theist. If you know God does not exist, you're an atheist. You're just would be a Gnostic form of it if you want to go with that multi-axle approach. But
yeah, if we're talking about like the Christian God or the Muslim God, I feel like I have reasons to not believe that God exists. So I would be an atheist against those gods.
Yeah, and that's fine. Right? You can be an atheist, local atheist toward those gods, right?
Yeah.
But the agnostic says I don't have a position on the God claim as a whole, as global, right? If let's say the proposition is at least one God exists, right? There is at least one God. The agnostic says I don't know if that's true or false. If you don't think that question is true, and you don't think that question is false, you are an agnostic. If you want to take the label or not, that's completely up to you. I know Chris has. He now no longer is an atheist. He considers himself to be agnostic. You might be the tired agnostic at this point.
I still like the tired atheist because I argue that God doesn't exist with a lot of Christians. So I give like a lot of reasoning and issues with scripture and context.
The question is, are you a global atheist?
Yeah.
You think that there is no God in general?
I think, and that many of the gods that are presented.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
You're localizing.
Yeah, you're giving expository, and you're trying to parse your answer. Trust me, don't do that. Do you think there are no gods?
Just a generic sense that I believe Creator created everything, then I definitely have to be agnostic in that sense.
All right, so the God proposition
you're agnostic. That either direction.
No, I get you. So you would actually be an agnostic, but you are atheist to certain local gods, like the Christian God.
Yes.
Okay, and that's perfectly fine. See, you have a good ontology. You have a well-reasoned, well-structured, rational approach that I can get behind, dude. And I'm the same. And by the way, we're a lot more alike than you think, then, because I don't evaluate the Christian claim so much, but there are local gods I do not believe in, right? The Anselm logical type argument, right? The logical problem of evil. That God, which is omnibenevolent, omnipotent, and omniscient, that is an impossible being if evil exists, right? Because it's not a coherent, structured, logical framework. All those propositions cannot be true at the same time. Therefore, it'd be inconceivable to me to have an illogical God. So I would be atheistic, or if you want to say atheist, whatever, to that particular deity, fine. Same thing like a younger creationist God does not exist, right? If God exists, he didn't create the world 7,000 years ago, unless he's a manipulative, lying, being. So no, I agree with you. I think you got.
Unless he's Descartes' demon.
Yeah, but Descartes was a rationalist who argued that God would not do that to us by fiat. He put that out.
No, yeah. He did argue, but basically the only way that there would be a creationist God is if he was basically Descartes' demon.
Yeah.
And the only way I would lump agnostic more so in the atheist camp is I don't see how you could be agnostic and lean towards arguing theism.
You wouldn't argue, but you wouldn't argue atheism either. You wouldn't argue either, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like
a global agnostic doesn't argue in either direction.
Right.
They think that both directions are false.
Well, I would say that both directions are just not justifiable.
Yeah.
To me.
Well, I can't justify being a theist, and I can't justify being an atheist.
Correct.
Therefore, I take the position of not applying any truth value to the proposition of a God's existence.
Perfect.
Would you agree that most agnostics, though, seem to fall on the coin side of arguing against a God when it comes to in the local sense?
Yeah, no, I do actually, and I agree with you on that. If you look at Dr. Malpass's landscape of belief and knowledge when it comes to atheists and theists, you'll see that agnosticism is right in between those two. And you could be a little bit on the side either way. You can be a little bit more one side, a little more the other side, and you're still within that range of agnosticism. And I'm okay with that. I think that's a perfect way of looking at it, actually. And so you could argue, hey, look, your younger creationist God doesn't exist, and still be an agnostic. When I have people go, well, you can't be agnostic and argue that that particular God does not exist, I'm like, the hell, I can't. Why can't I? I'm saying that I don't believe that. I believe that that particular God does not exist, right? Because it's logically incoherent, or it's something I'm justified to believe that does not exist.
Yeah,
it's a strange. Go ahead.
Yeah. For example, other than the the creationist God, I would say that I believe that El and Baal do not exist, and I would argue against their existence. But I'm not going. But on a global level, I can't go up to I would not say that the deist type God, just this God that decided to create everything and then went ambivalent on us, doesn't exist. I can't assign a truth value to that God either way. So on a global level, I am an agnostic, but on a local level, when it comes to particular deities, I am most certainly an atheist.
Yeah, I think
many respects.
I think James is in the same position, but I wouldn't call that agnostic atheism. That's not what that position is. It's just confusing.
Well, when I used to use the term agnostic atheist, it confused a lot of Christians. Because they didn't really know which way I was arguing.
Right. So what good does it do? It just causes confusion.
But when I break it down for them and I let them know that if we're talking about a prime mover, I'm agnostic. When we're talking about the God that you're talking about, I'm an atheist, and here's why I disagree with your God. It makes the conversation go so much easier.
Yeah, no, I think
don't really argue about the terms then.
Yeah, no, I mean you're saying prime mover, which I get, but I think you could probably make the argument that if you're not going to say that there is no God at all, period, and you're not going to make that as a belief claim, and I get that, and that's what agnosticism is. So yeah, we're on the same page actually. But real quick, somebody had said this. Moel said, "Atheism leads to nihilism if the atheists do not believe in a hereafter." That's what the Muslim told you, and he did not quote Steve McRae. Steve McRae is not an academic.
Oh, that's the Muslim I talked to.
Yeah.
Moel.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, people can quote me, dude. Just because I'm not an academic doesn't mean that people can't quote me, right? I mean, I quote a lot of people that aren't academics.
That you reach out to his friend for information and philosophy.
Yeah.
Was the other thing he cited.
But what type of nihilism are they talking about? He says atheists do not believe in afterlife are nihilists. Well, what kind of nihilist are they? Are you saying that they're like a metaphysical nihilist? That there's no supernatural. If you're a ontological or philosophical naturalist, then you do not believe in an afterlife, right? Because that just entails that. I wouldn't call that nihilism, though.
my issue when I talk to atheists who take a more extreme nihilistic approach, I feel like they're taking a much stronger position.
But what? But what though?
That there's no grand meaning in the
Okay,
universe.
meaning.
There's
Okay, that's why I was going to go with that.
everything is bleak.
Yeah. You talk about like the Nietzschean approach to nihilism,
Yeah.
where life has no
Yeah.
meaning or purpose in some regards, which is not really what he was saying, I don't think. But yeah, no, that's not, again, that's just, I don't buy into that at all. I think atheists have purpose in life. I think atheists have meaning in life. You can be an atheist or agnostic and fully have purpose. I have purpose. I think my life has value.
See,
It has nothing to do with
Steve
being
and I are
atheist or agnostic.
definitely going to disagree on that one. I am much more in line with it as a Nietzschean nihilist.
And I'm fine with that, right? I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong on that. There's no right or wrong answer. But I personally can give myself purpose to life. If you choose not to, that's how you look at your philosophy. I can't really fault you for that, right? I can't say you're right or wrong on that.
Well, yeah, and here's where you and I would probably agree that we can have subjective purpose.
I think I can have intrinsic purpose.
We can give ourselves purpose. I don't think that there's any innate purpose.
Yes, and I disagree with that. I think we do have innate value.
Oh, okay.
But it's really hard to justify that. I will agree, and I will have to like really. I've dived into that topic before to try to justify intrinsic value, and the reason I think it's the hard part of this is this. If to say that it has an intrinsic or objective value would mean that somebody else has to have access to that, right? And that's a very difficult statement to make. That my value to life is because, for example, like my daughter, I have purpose for my daughter, right? I have meaning to my life to support her and make her happy and productive and be a good dad. But nobody else has access to that as far as my feelings for that. What they do have is they can see the results of that, right? They can see that I have some kind of a being. So they have access to that. So it really depends on what you're going to define as objective and subjective in that case. So I'm willing to take a bullet to that. I'm not going to die on that hill that I have intrinsic value, but I will say that at the very least, I agree with you. We have subjective value, yes, clearly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll say that we have subjective value. But I don't think that we have any kind of transcendent value at all.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, transcendent.
Hey, before I hop off,
yes, sir.
I wanted just to point out to Mo in the comments that because he sent a message in the private chat that he said that Steve doesn't have an answer for his points. Mo, if you go back and play this, I raised some of your concerns with Steve, and he put his thoughts on them.
I did, yeah.
So I don't know where he was hiding from it.
Yeah, I don't think atheism and nihilism are related in any way, shape, or form. Even if somebody doesn't believe in the afterlife, I wouldn't say that has to do with nihilism. Because there's many different types of nihilism. Many different types.
But I do have to run so I can drive. But thank you for letting me on for a few minutes.
Oh, anytime, my friend. I'm really happy you're in the community and adding a voice to it. I'm really been impressed by the fact you're taking things on board and adding to it rather than just having like these knee-jerk Pavlovian responses to what I say. Because as you know, in the atheist community, a lot of the higher atheists, not fans of mine, because they don't know how to address my arguments. They can't out-argue with me because they have no evidence to back any of their things up. And that's not dealing with ontology, right? We're not talking about the existence of God. They're trying to say that what I'm saying, philosophically speaking, is incorrect. And, well, in order to say that, you need to actually demonstrate that. And they can't. So, and I'm glad that
you should always be willing to have a discussion. So
yeah, likewise.
I would love to see you and Matt Dillahunty eventually talk.
Well, that's up to Matt.
I think that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I doubt it. That would be up to Matt. I mean, I've talked to him before. He's been on the show, and I asked him about agnostic atheism, and he still affirmed that agnostic atheism in the weak case, which would be the lack of belief atheism, is nonsensical. He disagrees with Iron Chariots. He actually does not think it makes sense to say you're agnostic atheist if you're a weak atheist, and I agree with him on that. So, but yeah, we're probably never going to have a conversation. There's no advantageous reason for him to do so, because if I made him look bad, he has a following, right? And so far, nobody has ever really been able to make me look bad on any of this. Go ahead and try, but I have the citations. He doesn't. He's never quoted anybody. He's never used any academic resources on this particular topic, and I have tons of them. And so I think in any kind of actual discussion, it would be favorable to me, not him. But I know a lot of people that have asked me, they said, or told me, they said, Steve, look, if Matt Dillahunty even changes his mind on this, it's not going to be you that convinces him because of the whatever transpired between us, but it will be somebody else who's listened to you. And I'm okay with that.
No, yep, and definitely. Thank you for having me on.
Yep.
I'm going to start driving, and it's not that good to zoom and drive.
No, it's not.
Later.
See you later, James.
Yeah, I'm going to
See
put
you,
my
Chris.
email in the live chat if people want to like send me an email, and then I'm going to end this.
Real quick before and ending this, though, I did want to briefly touch on atheism and nihilism.
Sure.
And I just want to say, it's going to be really funny after this stream because we're going to be saying that atheism and agnosticism do not lead to nihilism. And yet I'm sitting here and I'm nihilistic about almost everything.
Yeah, but that's not.
It's a non sequitur,
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
going to be hilarious to
That's
watch.
a coincidence,
people
right? But there's a coincidence there, but it doesn't mean there's a correspondence there between.
Yeah,
the two, right?
exactly. It's just gonna be really funny to watch people misconstrue that. They'll go watch my several streams on nihilism and be like, see, he proved himself wrong.
Yeah, just remember, correlation doesn't imply causation, right?
Oh, who's here?
We got somebody else coming in real quick. Clyde wanted to join us real quick. Why? I thought I was going to be ending this, but I might have to wait while people come on in. Clyde, what do you got for us?
Sound, man. Sound.
Are people having
Clyde,
technical
we
issues?
cannot hear you.
Is it working?
Yes, Clyde.
Oh, there we
Hi.
go.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So I had a good question about the global atheism that you were talking about.
Hi.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
When you're saying that, I mentioned in the comments, but I don't know if you read it or not, but if you reject like a local conception of a deistic God, does that extend to a global you reject the global deistic God or no?
Well,
No.
I
No?
don't think so. But what do you? Right.
So going after localized variations of a concept of a God is not extend to a global concept automatically.
Okay.
Right.
Because you're extending it from it. For example, say that I'm going to reject atheism. Rejecting atheism it does not thereby mean I'm rejecting non-theism. Because what you're doing is rejecting a subcategory, as it were. So if you reject the deistic God, you're just rejecting a subcategory of theism in general.
Yeah, under non-classical
globally rejecting
theism.
it.
And make it very clear. By the way, Clyde, you got some background noise.
I do?
Yeah, it sounds like you're underwater.
Let me go get some headphones then real quick.
It's okay. That's under non-classical theism, though, because under classical theism, deists would actually be considered to be non-theists, believe it or not, right? Because they're a classical theist, they believe in an interpersonal deity, right, of some kind. So under that schema, deists would actually be under non-theist, which sounds weird. But in the non-classical, then deists would obviously be under theist. But yeah, the whole thing with global, though, it doesn't matter whether you're a deist or theist. The global is somebody who says, I do not have the belief that there are no gods. It's simple as that. If you don't have the belief that there are no gods, then you're not an atheist in philosophical terms. You're just a non-theist.
Right.
Oh.
The atheism, so non-theism is just.
Actually, wait, quick. You could actually be a theist too, but if you don't have a belief in God, so if you think about this. If you don't have the belief that God doesn't exist,
in order to be a non-theist, a non-theist is a disbelief in a God. From there, it depends on what your nuance is to that. If you believe that there is no God, then you're an atheist. If you do not assign a truth value to the proposition of a God,
right,
then you're an agnostic. And if you believe that the concept of God is nonsensical, you're an atheist. And then potentially there's debate over this. So there's a huge debate right now over how to classify things like pantheism. I think pantheism actually should be in a category of its own.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
I don't think it qualifies as non-theism or as theism.
I would put it under non-theism, but I think there's an argument to be had there, much like theological and cognitivist.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I'd contend that a little bit myself, but it's a mess in its own right.
Well,
but then under basically all of those lack belief in God. All those disbelieve God, but all of them have a nuance which that modifies that in some way. So an atheist is going to modify that to belief that there is no God. An agnostic does not believe a God exists, but at the same time does not believe that they can say there is no God, and they don't think that they can say there is a God. Right. And then, atheist is going to modify the disbelief to I disbelieve God and think that the concept is nonsensical. Then on the other side, you have theist. A theist is someone who believes in God, in a God, and what qualifies as God is hence why we have the problem with pantheism. Okay. But I just define it as a being with transcendent power over the laws of the universe.
Yeah. And real quick, by the way, like theological and cognitivist would modify that as well, right? A theological and cognitivist doesn't believe in God, but they cannot be a theist or a not theist because they think both those categories are cognitively meaningless. So
yes.
So this is why it's really hard to put things under classical logic when you're dealing with Gnostic beliefs and claims and things like that, right? Because they're very nuanced. The theological and cognitivist, they're saying, you know what, the whole thing is nonsensical. They think it's all meaningless, and they think that the proposition God exists is not even a cogent proposition. They don't think it's truth apt. So they can't even evaluate it one way or another. They can't even say they don't believe because they don't know what they're not believing. But real quick, so Mo said this, and what you think of this real quick, Clyde. Mo said, Steve even admitted that if you do not believe in an afterlife, nihilism emerges. When did I say that?
No,
I believe I said just the opposite. Did I not?
He did not say that at all.
Yeah.
Belief in an afterlife does not necessitate any form of nihilism.
Right.
I do not believe in the existence of an afterlife, but that would have no bearing on whether or not I thought a life has meaning, or that there's objective morality, or that there's knowledge that can be gained. It has the only thing that my disbelief in the afterlife does is leave me an afterlife nihilist in some way.
I mean, well, the best, if Mo wants to make it into a better argument, and I will steelman him on this, what I would be arguing, Mo, if I was you, has nothing to do with atheism. What I would be arguing is that ontological naturalism or philosophical naturalism, either or, same thing, will result in existential nihilism.
Yeah, but then you have the problem with people like me. I'm not a methodological naturalist at all.
No,
so,
well, wait, you are a methodological naturalist. You're not a philosophical naturalist.
Or philosophical,
right?
Yeah, I'm not a philosophical naturalist. I do not limit myself to only thinking that the world is natural. I actually take on an idealist point of view to quite a degree.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably make the argument of existential nihilism, that there's no intrinsic value to life or anything like that. If you want to subscribe to some kind of, well, you know what? I don't think I even fall either. Even if you're, my chair is falling down. Even if you're a ontological naturalist, I don't think that it leads to existential nihilism. Then, and now that I think about it, unless you're meaning it as existence itself, but existential nihilism isn't really about existence as much of having an intrinsic value to oneself. Which again, I think there is something.
And I mean, even there, I mean. What is Sam Harrison? Is Sam Harrison a naturalist in basically all philosophical forms?
I think he is.
Yeah. So Mo's position really wouldn't carry over to him, anyways. It just does not necessitate nihilism.
Right.
Naturalism.
If I may backtrack for a little bit.
Yeah.
That epistemic. What was it? What is it?
Something
logic.
Dostastic logic.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out more about this. I'm on my computer. What would be the best source to find more about that?
A good introductory source on formal logic and different modes of logic is going to be the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is freely available online.
Yeah, and there's a couple PDFs that I might be able to send you later on logic.
Oh, thank you.
On logic. There's stochastic logic is really interesting. I'm trying to learn modal logic, which is really hard. I gave up. There's also predicate logic, propositional logic, multi-valued logic, fuzzy logic, tonic logic, or there's like billion types of logic.
There's what's it called? Paraconsistent logic.
I've written about paraconsistent.
But let's not even get there. When you have logic that throws out the law of non-contradiction, it gets. I will never forgive Hegel.
Yeah, Hegel's not one of my favorite. Yeah, but when you get into like what's called monotonic and non-monotonic logic and all these other types of logic, it's very confusing. But I do like paraconsistent logic. I don't mind getting rid of certain types of things like law of excluded middle and even the law of non-contradiction without the principle of explosion for certain cases, because there's something called dialtheism, and dialtheism under paraconsistent logic states that you can have true contradictions without principle of explosion. And what principle of explosion is that if you can prove a contradiction, if you can have contradictions, you can prove anything. You can prove anything in the universe if you allow for contradictions to be to exist. But with the paraconsistent approach with dialtheism, the paraconsistent says, look, you can get rid of law of non-contradiction, and the dialtheist says, you know what, you can have true contradictions that will not allow for principle explosion. So it's bizarre, but it can happen. Yeah.
And then there is a mode of logic which does away with the principle of explosion too.
Yeah, that's dialtheism. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll sign some PDFs on that. So it gets really confusing real fast. But
yeah, it's already.
Just to get to Molo real quick, I wanted to tell him this. Look, I am not a existentialist, right? I mean, the existentialist would believe something along the lines that life doesn't have purpose, but we make our own, right? I want to tend more to what's called essentialism, but I can't find a justification for it yet. But essentialism is the position that things exist because they have properties, they have essences that make them the way what they are. So there's some kind of intrinsic meaning to life. There's some kind of intrinsic purpose to us. There's intrinsic value that we have that makes us what we are. So to be a human, there has to be an essential properties to what makes us human. So I want to be able to tend to essentialism over existentialism, and it's hard to justify that. So one of these days I will try to have a hangout on that. I'll try to get some actual philosophers in, and we'll discuss existentialism versus essentialism, because I think that's what Mo's trying to argue. But that has nothing to do with atheism. So Mo, get rid of atheism out of your arguments. Mo has nothing to do with atheism. Has nothing to do with nihilism. Has nothing to do with essentialism. Has nothing to do with existentialism.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that most of my nihilistic positions that I've ended up taking, I took before I stopped believing in a God.
Yeah.
I was mostly I was actually almost full nihilist on almost everything while I was still borderline Christian.
Yeah, no, I think what happens is people just throw all these positions together, and each one is a very nuanced position. That's why it takes a lot of reading even to understand a simple position, because there's just so many different positions out there. But anyways, I gotta end this.
So,
okay.
I actually found a book that there is on that what you were looking for.
Send it.
I just Googled it.
Email me. I might have it. I have a whole bunch of stuff in my bookmarks, but my bookmarks are crap. I need to find a good bookmark organizer. I'm not download one later because I got so many bookmarks. Because you know me, I do cite things and I do reference things, but what happens is I go, where did I find that? Even though I have a bookmark, where did I find that reference? I'm constantly trying to find what bookmark that I referenced this from. But
I use Excel and just catalog them.
You export it to Excel?
I copy the links into an Excel spreadsheet, and then I catalog them by the author and the name of the article
like that.
and stuff like that.
I just want a better bookmark program. All right, last question. Moel says, what would you call a person who does not believe in the ultimate accountability? That's an atheist as well. No. Let me explain this before we leave here very carefully for you, Mo, because you're making huge mistakes here. Atheist is only somebody who has a position or does not believe God exists. In other words, they believe God does not exist, or if you want to use the crappy internet atheist definition of somebody who doesn't believe in God, okay, whatever. But either or, it's still a position on the proposition of God's existence. It deals with the ontological proposition. It has nothing to do with anything else. The only exceptions you could argue is that SEP and IEP, which is the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, written by Dr. McCormick, he tries to relate atheism to philosophical naturalism. I don't particularly like that approach, but somebody can at least go down that path if they want to. But you're not even trying to do that. So your view of atheism is just completely bizarre. It has nothing to do with whether there's ultimate authority or not. Now you're dealing in consequentialism, right? Now you're dealing with normative ethics. What are the consequences for our actions? Is there an accountability for our actions? It has nothing to do with atheism whatsoever. Stop conflating all these things. It doesn't help your arguments. It really doesn't.
Yeah, I'd sent you a book about the. Sorry for
No, go ahead.
distracting from that. That actually goes into what you're looking for.
All right.
It's on your yeah.
Awesome. I like reading stuff. All right, thanks, Clyde. Appreciate it, man.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, thank you for watching this. I'm going to upload this as a premiere later on after Atheist Experience is over, because 4,000 people watch that, and I get a fraction of that. Well, I guess most of my videos lately have only been about half that. Not live even, but after a period of time. But I want to thank you guys for indulging us. Sorry we weren't broadcasting this to YouTube today. YouTube was having issues, but I guess they're fixed because I see Atheist Experience is live now. But Chris, I want to thank you for coming in. It's been a while since I've hung out with you, and I don't want you to think that I've forgotten about you, but you took your hiatus because of school. So
yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back. With that, guys, we'll bid you adieu. Good night.